Okay, so for the recording purposes, my name's Eleanor Ramsey, one of the careers advisors and employer liaison and project officers at the University of the West of Scotland, the careers team. We have a guest speaker from the Cabinet Office, the UK government. Our guest speaker, Nicola Irvine-Brown, and I'll hand it over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Yagana. Lovely to meet you all today. Hopefully you can see the slides okay there. Perfect. As Yagana says, I'm Nicola Irvine-Brown. I work for the UK government, and as you can tell by my accent, I work in Scotland, so I'm in the Glasgow office just now currently. So I'm going to run through, as Yagana says, probably about 20 minutes, 30 minutes presentation, and then for a Q&A discussion afterwards. But I should say at any point, if there's anything that you want me to clarify when I'm speaking, or if you do have could you expand on that, then please feel free to just put that in the chat, and I'll pause and I'll drill a bit deeper onto that certain point. So going to quickly cover what is a civil servant, how I became a civil servant, where do I currently work, how I found the application process, and what success profiles there are in government, and also is everyone's journey to becoming a civil servant the same. And throughout, I provided links within the presentation, and at the end, I've closed it with some useful links that would be helpful, or some additional steps that you might want to take away after this session. So if you were to Google or check out Wikipedia, this is the definition currently on Wikipedia of what a civil servant is. So I'll let you read it, but basically a civil servant is a collective term for a sector of government composed mainly of career civil servants hired on professional merit rather than appointed or elected, whose institutional tenure typically survives transitions of political leadership. 2 points in there. Career civil servants, yes, we have career civil servants. So those that came into the organisation straight from school, straight from college, straight from university. But we're not all career civil servants. Some of us have just joined this year. Some of us have only been in a couple of years. And also the second point is not all of us survive transitions of political leadership. So some might only be a civil servant for a year or two. They might go back to the private sector. They might go into the public sector. They might come and go between the two. So those 2 points I would dispute against Wikipedia. We're not all career civil servants. And we don't always last the 4 years because we might want to move in and out of industries. The one thing I do agree with, and it's for clarity, in the United Kingdom, it only crowns from national government. So be it UK government, the devolved administration, Scottish government, Northern Ireland executive, or the Welsh government, we are employees of class as civil servants. Whereas if you're a local authority, so Glasgow City Council, Dundee City, Aberdeen, these are referred to as local government civil service officers or public servants. So it's just, that's a really good point to clarify. If you hear civil servants, it means you're appointed by the Crown and you work for UK government or one of the 3 devolved administrations, not a public servant or not a local authority. So they got that point right. So what actually is a civil servant? Well, there's over 400,000 of us, closer actually to 500,000. We work across ministerial departments like the Cabinet Office, Home Office, Department for Work and Pensions, and also non-ministerial departments like Her Majesty Revenues and Customs. We work for arm's length bodies like Student Loan Company. Some of you might be familiar with them in the next couple of years, or public corporations such as the BBC. The work we do touches on all aspects of life in the UK, from transport to defence or army, military, navy, to the environment, wind farms, or health, vaccination programmes, culture, and obviously sport, Commonwealth Games. Civil servants are involved in all of those aspects. So they touch on all of the aspects of life. We ensure the effective running of the government and provide the best possible services to the public. That is our mandate. The scale and the complexity and the impact the work that we do is unmatched across many organisations out there, I would say. As we provide frontline services, which in civil service terms, that's classed as operational delivery. And these can be customer advisors at job centres who are part of the Department for Work and Pensions. They can be probation service officers, a Ministry of Justice, So those colleagues on today that are studying criminal justice, you're probably very familiar with terms of probation service offices. That's Ministry of Justice. That's our department that delivers that for you. Passport offices. Who do you get your passport offices from? That is civil servants in the Home Office. We also advise ministers on policies such as cyber security. We develop strategies, be it internal ones in terms of our diversity and inclusion of our workforce. And we also draft new legislation for our ministers. We are far-reaching in that regard. And we also work across the UK, from the north of Scotland to the bottom of the southeast of England. And we work across the world as well. These are diplomats from the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, or as weapons engineers for our Navy as part of the Ministry of Defence. It really is the scale and opportunities and it's comparable to any organisation in the UK in terms of its breadth, of where we can work, and also what we deliver on for the public. I've been a civil servant for a year. And what I like most about this civil service is the opportunities for career progression and also the learning and development opportunities that I have been able to access since becoming a civil servant. Once you become a civil servant, you will generally become part of a profession. And the profession offers networking opportunities, career routes, training and development programs. So there's career profession is project management, a profession might be policy, a profession might be obviously finance, accounting, HR colleagues. And we work closely with these professions across government. Our values also resonate. We serve with integrity, honesty, objectivity and impartiality. So what does my department do and where? The clues in the title, obviously, Cabinet Office. I work in the Cabinet Office is classed as the centre of government, along with Her Majesty's Treasury. I currently work closely with 16 departments across government to deliver my work programme. Within the Cabinet Office, we've got 40+ business units or business areas. And this includes all our functions across government. So our commercial function, which is procurement, our security, our legal, our lawyers, our digital, our technology, and also the Cabinet Secretary, who work to support the Cabinet Ministers and our Permanent Secretary. The priorities of Cabinet Office are to support the Prime Minister and Cabinet to deliver the government's programme. We deliver efficiencies and reforms to make government better and for the public that we serve, to create a more unified democracy and strengthen and secure the United Kingdom at home and abroad. Our staff are based across the UK and across 17 cities, such as York, Norwich, Bristol, Newcastle. And we have 2 headquarters, Whitehall, London, and Glasgow. And that's where I'm based, because in 2021, Glasgow was chosen as the first ever second HQ for the Cabinet Office as part of the Levelling Up agenda. And we moved into a government hub this year and share our office building with HMRC. We're on the top 2 floors. It's a fantastic building and we can see 360 degrees of Glasgow. We currently have 272 full-time staff based in Glasgow, and our plan and ambition is to have 600 by 2024. Currently in Glasgow, there's 18 business units or areas. Examples include the public bodies, team, our newly established Public Sector Fraud Authority, Civil Service Human Resource colleagues, and myself, who works for the Government Business Services. Government Business Services covers our shared services, it covers pensions, and it covers recruitment, and all platforms and systems that are used internally within government. So if I was to ask you, I'm going to ask people to use the chat here. If I was to ask for a copy of your CV, would you say a yes or no right now? If you can use the chat, that would be great. And Ugana, can you keep me right with the chat? Because unfortunately I can't see it with my sharing of the screen at the moment.
Yeah, so.
Okay, and the next question is, if you have a CV, could you select one of these ratings? I don't have a usable CV. I have one, but it's not up to date. I have one, but it's poorly laid out. CV has all the right information, but it's probably a dull read. And I'm proud of my CV. So again, pause for thought and think about that as well. If you have a CV, if you said yes for the first one, and the second question, what would that be? 1 to 5. So those that said yes, what would it be? 1 to 5. What? Yeah.
Okay, some people are saying 4. Do you see the chat as well or no?
Yes, I did. I worked it out.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, that's fine.
That's super. Okay, so a bit of a mix. So some people have one, but it's not up to date and has all the information, but it's probably a dull read. And that's probably true of most of us right now. If you were to ask, myself included, if I was to hand over my CV right now, I would say, give me an hour and I'll give it to you. But it's something to bear in mind when you are looking for job applications, because sometimes a job advert will be advertised and there'll be a close of midnight application and you've just saw it that day and you've got a part-time job and you're only home at 10 o'clock. That is sometimes the reality of applying for jobs. So it's always good to have a CV ready and prepared for when that job advert is ready to go, that you can quickly get your application in place. What type of CV is required for these positions here? I'll come on to that, Ramsha. Because the civil service is almost 500,000 civil servants working, the roles and the variety of them are far reaching. So some of them, it could be a CV, a 1 to 2 page CV, and some of them, the job applications will be an application process. But it's always good to have a CV there so you can pull those examples from and you can use that to include in your personal statement. So I'm going to talk through the next stage on what civil service application process and what is a success profile. So if you do go into CS Jobs and look at an advert, you will have come across these success profiles, and they were introduced in 2018 to replace the previous competency framework. And what they have done is they've matched out the ability, technical, behaviour, strength and experience. So very transparently on a job advert in the civil service, it will tell you if you're being assessed on your strengths or a technical or on a behaviour. And within the links that I'll provide at the last slide, it tells you a bit more details about what strengths they are looking for, and also in examples of some behaviours. So in terms of ability, it's really the aptitude or potential to perform the required standards. And the way that that will be assessed will generally be through a test, an online test, as part of the application process. Similar for the technical, it'll either be a test in advance online or also be a technical question at the interview stage. So you might have to do a test prior to an interview process. Behaviours, there's a variety of behaviours, and I'll talk that in more detail. And the behaviours is where we use the STAR application, the STAR method of approach. In terms of strengths, we have a strengths dictionary, and these are the things that you do regularly and what motivates you. And there's a really good tool, which is Civil Service Strengths Dictionary, and it can be used, in my view, not just for any job in the civil service, but also any career path that you might choose. It's a really good example of some of the strengths that any workplace or any industry will be looking for. So an example of a strength within civil service is analytical, and you seek and analyse information to inform decisions based on best possible evidence. Now, those strengths are really good tools for you to refine and rework possibly a CV to really home in on what your strengths and what added value you can bring to any job or career. And experience is obviously your knowledge or mastery of an activity of subject gained through involvement in or exposure to it. And your experience will be assessed generally through the application process or as part of your CV. And it should be noted that not all of these are expected for every job advert. So one job advert might have an ability assessment, and one job advert might have behaviours. My job advert, it was behaviours, experience and strengths. because of the level, but other job adverts might just be the technical assessment and the experience based on your CV. So it's really good when you're looking at any job advert, but particularly civil service, is to really get familiar with the terminology that they use at success profiles. So if they use terms like strengths, look at the strengths dictionary. If they use the behaviours, make sure you go into the behaviours documents and really unpick what they mean by that behaviour. And also the technical, if they say technical, expect to have a test. So be a verbal, numerical, psychometric test. And the tools are all there, which I'll cover off. So in terms of behaviours, it's used across many industries, the STAR approach. So situation, task, action, results. So it's used across civil service, NHS, other public service bodies, private sector, voluntary sector. It's a really good tool for you to form your answers either in an application process or an interview. You might come across some variations. So I know that the NHS and Scottish Government use STAR, which is additional art of reflection. Others might use, when you progress through your career, might use STARLET. So when you've learned from that experience and the transferability or the scalability of what you did, how that could be applied across the organisation. Or also, much more simply, much more straightforward, is CAR, context, action, and result. So as I said, this is used for your behaviours, and for many CS job applications, you are required to use STAR. If it's a behaviour, success profiles, behaviours, they are looking for a STAR example. So you need to structure your example like this. It's also used in civil service for both your application and your interview process if it's a behaviour assessed role. So it's really critical that you become, if you go for a job in civil service and it's behaviours, that you become really familiar with what the STAR method is and approach. And the behaviours are identified as being important for that role. So again, they can vary across the roles. So an example of a behaviour in civil service is working together. An example of behaviour I had evidence for my job application was one on leadership. So they will vary across the job adverts. So some key points to note. With a job application, stick to one example per behaviour on your application. You really want to evidence that example and work through that situation, the task, the action, results. But bear in mind, the action and results should be the majority of the example. So your situation, maybe a sentence or so. Same with your task, your actions, a bit more expanded, and the result should be what was the impact of that and your behaviour and your delivery of that project. And also use the terminology of that behaviour. So as I said, there's a tool, and I've put the link on that slide, which provides a bit more detail of what the behaviours are. So look at the terminology, the narrative that they're using within what actually working together means, and make sure that's reflective of your job application as well. It's a really good skill to have, is that sort of investigation approach when you're looking through job adverts, and try and sort of make sure you sort of pick up some of the terms, narrative that organisation use. It'll resonate a lot more with this when the sifting process comes in, which is generally a panel of people looking through the job adverts to see who will get to the successful interview stage. There is obviously, this is some materials here, but obviously UWC also has some further bite-sized information, some videos on the STAR approach as well. So really would say get familiar with the STAR approach. It's a really good tool, whether it's used for behaviours or any job application or any interview process. It keeps answers concise and clean, and it shows the impact of what you've delivered on. So this is an example of the managing a quality service. So this is 2 different grades. So this is one of the behaviours, and it was actually one of the behaviours I had to demonstrate when I went for the job, was managing a quality service. And I'll come on to the different grades. EO at the top is executive officer, and level 3 is the next grade up, which is higher executive officer and then senior executive officer. So again, you can see some of the terminology here that's used that you should pull out. You know, it's all, the first one is very customers, stakeholders, identifying good customer service. So really pull out that, what was the impact that you had on your customers for that one. And it can be a lot of students, you know, might have a part-time job. I mean, when I was a student, I worked in a coffee shop. You can still apply some of the STAR approach for part-time work, volunteering work, by talking about, you know, particularly if it was customer or public facing roles that you might have, if coffee shop or retail, and how you worked with customers over if it was a customer complaint, or if you know, they weren't happy with a service provision, and how you reacted to that and responded to that, and you can structure your answers that way as well. So just wanted to show you that within that tool, again, it's key, know the grades and look up the relevant behaviour for that as well, because they do vary. So how can you become a civil servant? These are some of the roles that you can come into civil service. So there's apprenticeships, internships, industry placement and direct entry. So again, we'll make sure we provide the links out to you, but the apprenticeships varies between during your degree and up to 4 years. It can be applicable for anyone that meets the civil service nationality rules, and obviously upwards of the age of 16, and a range of qualifications. Internships, we've got one on Summer Diversity Internship Programme. We do love an acronym, SDIP, and that's over obviously summer holidays. So we just had an internship as through the Summer Diversity Internship Programme within GBS, and that was over a 6 to 9 week course. And obviously they set out the requirements for that there as well. Industry placements, there's a mixture of industry placements. So for some examples at the moment, we have industry placements for a social researcher, for a summer student placement, or placements for economists up to a year. There's also been introduced, I think it's in England, it's a T-level industry placement, which is a national recognised qualification up to sort of equivalent of 3 A levels. So there's a pathway for that to work with, I have T-level placements over a 2-year period within the civil service. And the other option is direct entry. So this is when all the jobs are directed onto CS Jobs. And the duration, well, that depends on yourself really, and if you want to pursue that. So as I said, it could be a couple of years, you could be a career civil servant, 20, 30 years in the civil service. That's entirely on you. There is grades, different grades, and I've put them down, and I've highlighted the ones that I would class as the direct entry route for university students. And depending on obviously your work experience, and volunteering work, then it might be able to go to a higher executive officer. But that's a different grade. So AO, if you see that, administrative officer, AO executive officer, HEO higher executive officer, senior executive officer, and then it's grade 7, grade 6, and then above that it becomes STSs, which is our senior civil servants. So that's from our deputy directors up to our permanent secretary or cabinet secretary. So that's the different levels, and I think there's also an industry insight on the FASH team, sort of mid-November time, so look into that as well. So I thought it'd be helpful to see this week what jobs are actually being advertised for Glasgow. So CS Jobs, 100% of all jobs are advertised there. So there was 348 search results for Glasgow jobs on CS Jobs. Civil service at the moment do not advertise on CS1 jobs, which I know most people in Scotland use. So you do need to register for a CS Jobs account for the majority of the jobs within the civil service. So from that 348, 29 were executive officer and 82 were HEO, higher executive officer. Then you drilled it down to 6 job adverts at Cabinet Office this week for HEO level, and 1 job advert is also for 15 roles. So you can see Cabinet Office, higher executive officer, and you see those 6 roles there. Then you go into the click through this one here, which is the HEO roles in the Public Sector Fraud Authority, which is in PSFA, has recently been stood up as a business area. So obviously working across fraud across the public sector. And it'll obviously have a significant impact, hopefully, on squashing down some of the fraud that's prevalent in society at the moment, unfortunately. But you can see right down the bottom, so it tells you obviously salary, what the grade is, so higher executive, contract type, permanent. If you see things like fixed term, it will say if it's a 2-year, 3-year contract. And then obviously the business area. So that was, we use that term quite a lot, business unit or business area. And then working patterns, which is standard full-time Monday to Fridays, and then number of posts, 15. So although there were 6 job adverts at HO level, in Cabinet Office, in Glasgow, one job advert had 15 posts advertised. And for all those 15 jobs advertised for the HO Public Sector Authority, they all had the 4 same behaviours: making effective decisions, delivering at pace, communicating and influencing, and working together. So I thought it'd be helpful to run through my teams. Now I've covered off STAR, some of the ways to look through a job advert. I thought it'd be helpful to actually explain a bit more of how I came into civil service, but also my team's journey, to sort of showcase that it's actually quite different. You know, we've all had different career paths into civil service. So for myself, I did marketing management as a BA. I then went on to do an MPhil in sociology. After graduating from my MPhil, I did a bit of volunteering at Amnesty International. I then went to join the victim support within the High Court in Glasgow. So I worked for about a year there. So criminal justice students. It was very, in terms of obviously working in the High Court, it was very real experience of what the criminal justice process is about, and obviously supporting witnesses and victims through that process. And about a year into that, I thought to myself, I either go back to my studies and do a PhD, become a social worker, or find a new job. And I found a new job. So I went into policy and local government, started off as a policy officer in 2005, and basically worked up the ranks in the vets. So policy officer, senior policy officer, strategic development manager. I worked on all things in terms of corporate plans, strategies, performance management, best value audits. And I did that for about 15 years. And then when I saw the announcement about the Glasgow opening up in 2021, Cabinet Office, I thought, well, I'll have a look and see if there's any job applications, job adverts that I would be interested in. And there was one exactly titled the same job that I had within local government. So I thought, well, I'm going to go for it. And I did. So I did the big trawl of going through what are behaviours, what are the success profiles, why did they keep mentioning this? So I did a lot of background reading and a lot of prepping for it. And I wished earlier in my career someone had said, there's all these tools available out there across either as academia or across government sites that I could have used to really improve my interview skills, or also just to recognise what my strengths were. So that's why I really wanted to get that message across, is to really use those tools that are available to you. I want to play. Yep, I can. Yep, I will do. I'll pass them on. In terms of your comment about the quality management, there is a lot of project management roles. As I said, that's one of the professions in civil service. So in terms of myself, that's how I came into civil service, applied for the job and was successful at getting it. So I've been here a year this week as a civil servant. And this is my team across the board. So we work currently, as I said, within government business services, and we're involved in civil service data and insight team. So we do a mixture of KPIs, key performance indicators, data analysis, working with data visualizations, dashboards, policies, and the impact of that on policies and strategies. Person next to me, so candidate, the colleague A, when her career path was after leaving full-time application, she went for a variety of roles and she really didn't know what she wanted to do professionally. She started working in retail space, an assistant buyer. She then went into other sectors within the sort of retail industry, And then she left employment to raise her children. And after that, she rejoined as becoming a part-time receptionist in an insurance company to work around work-life balance of raising children still, and then worked there for over 10 years, and then became a civil servant 4 years ago, and joined CS Jobs team charging departments for using CS Jobs recruitment websites and using that. She also then moved into risk and portfolio, and then this year in the summer she joined my team. The person next to her with the purple hoodie is Ashley, and she studied economics and sociology. And she honestly says when she left university, she didn't really know what she wanted to do when I grew up. But she found those subject matters interesting, so she knew that she wanted to continue on that studies. She initially worked in a call centre, which she had been doing through her studies. And then unfortunately she was made redundant, so she decided I needed to get, as she called it, an adult job. And she trawled websites and then found out about sort of a entry-level management consultancy in the health sector. And she worked there for a number of years, and then she moved over to project management within the energy sector. And then, similar to me, when she saw the announcement about the Cabinet Office opening up in Glasgow, she looked at the jobs adverts and applied. And really for her, it's about making the difference for the UK public and really working at the centre of the civil service. And she's really proud to represent her communities in Glasgow. The person next to her, so colleague C, she has a Master's in English, a degree and a Master's in English. And her original plan had actually been to complete her PhD and become an English lecturer. But after completing her Master's, she needed a bit of a break from academia and to get some money in. So she applied for 3 jobs, and she was successful at getting the new claims advisor for Department for Worker Pensions, DWP. She worked across there for 16 years, again, similar to my experience, up through the grades. And she was successful at applying for 3 promotions, and she worked in 7 different roles across 5 directorates within DWP. And she came for a promotion to my team in the Cabinet Office in February. And the thing Lucy would class herself as a career civil servant. And the thing that she loves about being a civil servant is the range of opportunities and the different types of work she has been able to be part of. And she's developed a number of skills, such as line management, policy writing, performance management, contract development. And she's worked with a variety of people from job seekers to ministers. And she continues to enjoy her career to date. Next person, the one with the dog. She studied geographical information and mapping at Glasgow Uni. So land surveying, cartography and GIS. And she then started working in the GIS consultancy on their support desk, worked at HarperCollins Publishers and worked on a World Atlas. And then she joined an engineering consultancy firm, where she started to learn about innovation and creating products. And she was really passionate about that space. So she went on to pursue a certification in project management, and then she had an opportunity to join Cabinet Office. And really her drive is about efficiency and creating value, solving problems and showing that data and technology can make a difference. And she's excited to see and she joined November. So she's excited to see where her career will go in the civil service. And last but not least, last person, I was a postgraduate researcher doing her PhD for 3 years in psychology. Her BA was also, her degree was in business administration, her master's was in psychology, and her PhD was in psychology. And she became a civil servant in December, and she's actually recently moved from my team into an arm's length body, Care Quality Commission, and she's continued to pursue her career as a data analyst in government. So a real mixture, and that's what I wanted to get across, mixture of degrees, mixture, some of us have masters, one of us had a PhD, but actually in a different skill set that we brought across in our team as well, from academia, private sector, and myself, who came from the public service sector as well. So this is another way to show, this is the T level, but this is other ways, pathways or career journeys into becoming a civil service. So the T level ones, which I mentioned about the industry placements, about applying for a job directly, and similar to one of my team members was progressed through the civil service grades. Other entry routes are fast stream or the accelerated programs, and other accelerated programs such as Future Leaders Scheme. And that's obviously to become a senior civil servant. So a whole mixture, and again, it's just the breadth and the opportunities that civil service affords. So where would you find out more? So if you are interested about becoming a civil servant, or even more about information about what civil service is, I would suggest register on CS Jobs. 100% of all job adverts are advertised here. And use the sites that I've mentioned in terms of the Strengths Dictionary, the behaviours as learning tools. And also, there's also opportunities for learning opportunities. So for example, one executive officer's job advert had a webinar on writing a strong personal statement. It was free. You just had to click into the job advert, scroll down at the bottom pages, and it had about 8 days of webinars that you could join on to write about how to make your personal statement stronger in an application process. I would suggest follow up and continue step 3 if you are interested still. Follow up and continue the conversation on social media and also events and career fairs. So I'm also aware there's an industry insight for tax specialists, and that'll be a colleague from Her Majesty's Revenues and Customs coming along to speak to you also. And when you're ready, really start working on your CV for a job role and an advert. And also really start looking into your STAR examples that you can apply if it's part-time voluntary jobs that you're doing throughout your studies, and use that STAR approach. It's really important when you go for job roles and throughout your career that you really know yourself and you use real examples. So you know your strengths and you know your experience and what you can bring to any job roles. I've listed some useful links at the end, the bottom there, the job adverts, and I put them in full as well as the links, the career site, and also the success profiles. And there's also on the government website some technical test examples, so you can see what is a numerical, a verbal test example, and you can do some of those because assessment centres also require some of those as well. So hopefully that's been helpful, and thank you for listening. And if anyone's got any questions, happy to take them now.
That's great. Thank you so much. That was really, really thorough, informative, and useful information as well. And we loved the stories, how people got into civil service as well. So I'm going to stop the recording so that students can unmute and put their video on and ask questions and have a conversation, if that's okay. Thank you.